Hi, my name's Phil Wason, and this is the third in a series of facilitation in practice videos. I think in the last video we referred to contracting as a consultant before you even get in the facilitation mode. But I just wanted to build on that slightly for a few minutes now on the question of whether you're an internal or an external. Am I within the organisation and being brought in to facilitate, or have I been brought in from outside the organisation in order to facilitate? Because it does make a difference. There are challenges and there are opportunities, there are hazards in both roles. If you're an internal facilitator, one of the challenges is you can be perceived as having less credibility. You may not be perceived or recognized as a professional facilitator. In fact, you know the expression, a prophet in their own land is not accepted. It can feel a little bit like that for the internal facilitator. After all, you are part of that culture. You're one of the people who contributed to the culture being the way it is. In some ways, you're part of the problem. And so that can be a challenge for some internal facilitators. And it can be harder for you to confront the custom and practice, harder for you to confront the status quo. You might not even really understand the status quo as much as an external because it's just become so familiar to you. That's the nature of culture. You also, you live with these people. You've grown with them over the years you've been in the organization. And you will also live with the consequences of whatever the outcomes are of this piece of facilitation, of these workshops, whatever it is. And it may be brilliant, or it may be, that was a waste of time. But although you don't have such a fresh pair of eyes like an external might have, and it can be harder for you to be neutral because you know a lot of these people and you know their bosses and you know their history. It's difficult to, although it's difficult for you to detach yourself from all that, and therefore it's difficult for you to maintain objectivity because it's hard for you to stand outside the system that you are part of. But you do have understanding. You do have a lot of knowledge about the organization. You do have a perception, at least, of how we got to this place. And you know other people in the networks that you may need to work with in order to bring the resolution or bring progress. You do understand the issues, and a lot of externals won't have that. So it is an advantage that an internal has. And the internal people, the people you're with, the participants, they will know that you have this understanding. They won't be able to just pull the wool over your eyes, as it were, of you as an internal facilitator. And so over time, you can build up trust within an organization as a facilitator. You can become a trusted friend, almost like a business partner. You're brought in, they trust you to be impartial, if you can achieve that, and to work through some of the issues with them. You do have to be careful, of course, as an internal, of allowing a dependency culture to be created where they have some difficulty, call on you, bring you in. You've helped us before. And that's great, but it can be almost like a parent and child relationship if you're not careful, because really you want them to press on themselves, don't you, and be the best they can, independent of you as well. You also just need to watch that you're not treated as some kind of skivvy or lackey who, whenever there's something difficult, whenever they can't resolve it themselves, you're brought in and you get all the nasty bits of work. That's some of the challenges of being an internal facilitator and the opportunities. What about, though, if you're outside the organization? What about if you're an external and you're brought in as a consultant facilitator, for want of a better word? You do have a fresh pair of eyes. You are perceived as an expert. Credibility does sometimes come with simply being an external. It may just be perception and you're not the expert they think you are, but there can be high expectations because of that. Higher expectations sometimes than with an internal. And some of that is because the perception is you bring with you experience from other organizations, from other industries, from other walks of life, and you're able to share that with them. You may feel you may have, but you may feel you have, permission to challenge greatly, more greatly than the internal facilitator, and that people will listen and accept your challenge, because somehow coming from outside, you have this greater umbrella view, this greater high level understanding of the issues because you've seen them elsewhere. So you may have the objectivity that an internal facilitator sometimes struggles to get. But just be careful, because you may have been influenced by the client. And we talked about the dangers, the hazards of contracting in the last video. So you may have been influenced by your client, and so your understanding of the status quo may be warped, it may be biased, and so you just need to be careful about that, as I said in the last video, in your contracting, in what you discover, the data that you collect, and recontracting might be necessary. But because of that opportunity to be objective, you are able to be a greater influence as well, because you bring in external perspectives. Sometimes the clients, senior staff, the participants, they're prepared to listen to you, and you can have a greater sphere of influence simply because of that. Getting in can be harder. Yes, you've been invited in, but you've been invited in maybe by one or two people, and getting access to the people, getting access maybe to information, especially if it's a multidisciplinary issue and you want to get to other departments, you may have access to one place, but not to others. So if you're working as a consultant and you want to, be a facilitator of processes, that can be a bit of an issue for you. Other dangers, there can be suspicion. People are suspicious that you've been brought in order to sort out some situation or some people. Suspicions because you don't really understand. You can't understand. It's different here. And of course it is. They've got a point if people say that. And people can be a bit wary of externals, of the money that's being spent on you perhaps, and that they've had a bad experience in the past of people who came in, didn't really make much difference and went away again. And of course there is that syndrome with the external facilitator. It's great fun. You can get in, do some work and get out again. And you can have a boldness with you that really helps the situation. But what then? People just left to their own devices? Measuring the impact of your intervention, measuring the impacts of your facilitation can be difficult unless you've got permission to build in some business impact analysis or some return on investment analysis, so that you can show it's made a difference, so that you can be a longer term external facilitator who journeys with the people in a similar way to that an internal might do. So it can be great fun if you're an internal or an external. Both of them have their opportunities and both of them have their hazards. It's just really for you as an individual to be aware of this when you're engaging in the piece of work. So as we now approach the actual time with participants in a workshop, in the next video, I'd like to talk about the different ways of being a facilitator. Yes, there's lots of tools you can use. There's lots of practical approaches you can use. I just want to explore 6 types of intervention of you in the room and with the participants. And we'll look at that in the next video. So I look forward to seeing you there.